Good morning, everybody. Teching 101 here. In today's video, we are going to be talking about hockey. Who is your favorite hockey team? I'm not that way into sports myself, but I am a Pittsburgh Penguins fan. I got to see them play a few times. And of course, if you get up into Canada, there's even more hockey teams. You know what? I say that as a joke, but in the One Piece world, they could play hockey. Like, there is, like, boxing and stuff in the One Piece world, so I'm assuming hockey exists too. And in the One Piece version of hockey, they can use hockey, like observation hockey to, like, predict where the puck's going to go. But everybody has it. Armament hockey to vulcanize the hockey sticks, to smack them on the other side of the whole arena, blast them out of the whole place. And then, like, it only works if really strong people are all playing at once, right? Like that crazy all-star lineup we had in the last chapter, where we had Whitebeard, and we had Roger, and we had Rox, and we had Big Mom, and we had Garp, and Kaido was also there, and they were all there, and they all combined their attack power together against Emu. And it didn't really seem to do much. So this was something I said a few videos ago. I was really hoping it was just going to lead into a massive energy onslaught on Emu. And I really wanted it to do nothing. I wanted Emu's reaction. Like, Oda nailed it 100%, exactly how I saw it in my head. You know, I didn't want Emu to have a moment where he was like, okay, remember that scene in Dragon Ball Z? We're going back to the 90s. Or maybe this was the early 2000s. Okay, so remember that scene where Semi-Perfect Cell finally becomes Perfect Cell, and it's glorious and it's incredible, and then Vegeta thinks he's all that, and he's just like, all right, now we got a battle, and he finds out pretty quickly that he done screwed up, okay? But it's Vegeta. You know what he's gonna do, right? So he's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna use my strongest attack against you, and then we'll see who's laughing. And then he gears up to use the final flash, and the Faulkner score is playing in the background, and oh my god, this was such a cool scene, right? Probably gonna watch it again right after this. But anyway, so the scene where you got Perfect Cell and then Vegeta using the final flash, there's a moment where, now Cell survives this. He perfectly is fine. He's perfect. But for a moment there, he's like, oh man, this is gonna be, whoa, and then he gets hit. And he just regenerates perfectly fine. But there's that brief moment where he's like, this could actually kill me. And a brief moment of panic. I did not want to see that with Emu. I didn't want to see a moment with Emu where it's like all these attacks are coming at once and Emu's like, am I going to be okay? This seems troublesome. Maybe I should dodge this. Nope, nothing. Doesn't even phase them. Doesn't even have a moment afterwards where Emu is like little bead of sweat or something like, I'm surprised I survived that. No, nothing. Nothing. Emu tanked this, walked through it like they knew they had the invincibility god glitch on, and there was nothing in their whole damn world that's going to be able to touch them, okay? There was a level of sheer confidence there. And the thing is, we've seen before, I guess in the future from God Valley, but in the past from when we've read it, there are things, or at least one thing, that makes Emu extraordinarily nervous. And that would be Joy Boy's hockey nuke that was stored inside of Emmett. That made Emu begin to quiver and tremble in seemingly fear. So it's like, okay, that was hockey, and that had a reaction. There was boatloads, like battleship amount of hockey here, right? Like everybody that attacked Emu attacked with hockey. Even Kaido, who is just like the apprentice cabin boy on Rox's crew, still has hockey at this point and used a giant dragon attack. The attack was literally called Dragon! That should have just been every name that Kaido had, right? Okay. But yeah, everybody else there, you know Garp did not use the Galaxy Impact. It's like, I'm going to go a little easy on the hockey. I'm just going to use a solar system impact, not a galaxy impact, right? No, hockey was there. It was present. It was armament. It was conquerors. It was everything, okay? We saw it used, didn't matter, okay? So the deciding factor here is not just Conqueror's hockey, and not just like really powerful Conqueror's hockey, because there was, even if you want to say that, well, Whitebeard and Roger aren't really in their prime at this point, we don't see like the same intensity of hockey collisions that we saw later during Odin's flashback, but Rox is certainly in his prime at this point. And then it's also just the idea of stacking all of these attacks on top of each other. It just didn't work. It didn't even have close to the same effect as Emmett's hockey nuke. So it's like, okay, Joy Boy's Haki must just be much stronger than that, which is certainly the case. Or the kind of, what's the best way for me to describe it? Type of Haki or flavor of Conqueror's Haki maybe was different. Because remember, Haki just means your ambition, your will. And we've definitely seen the idea that, like, Haki can be imbued, like, maybe certain feelings and emotions, right? I went back and I read the chapter where we had the flashback between Emmett and Joy Boy. And Joy Boy was talking about how, the time has come, Emmett. I am going to store my most powerful Haki within you. So Joy Boy specifically mentions his most powerful Haki. He could have just been referring to Conqueror's Haki, as in the 3 types of Haki, observation, armament, Conqueror's is the strongest, but he could be referring to something else. He could be referring to, like, I have different flavors of Haki, or storing different emotions inside of my Haki, right? And then that is going to be released. I'm going to store it inside of you. And Joy Boy goes on to say that, like, hey, Emmett, you're going to live a lot longer than I am. I'm not going to be around forever. In case there's ever a moment where you're in dire straits and you're about to die, or somebody that you care about is about to die, this Haki will be there to save you, or them, okay? So that implied that, like, Joy Boy's Haki that he stored inside of the rope and he tied that knot inside of Emmett was that, like, this is Haki to protect my Nakama. This is Haki to protect my friends and my family. It might have a higher yield or a different kind of flavor or impact than the kind of Haki that would have been exhibited in the last chapter, okay? So there's a lot of people now that are talking about how maybe it's the intent behind the Haki what doesn't and does, in fact, harm Emu. So in the case there, and this is actually something brilliant on Oda's part, because we've always heard about how the Rocks crew just did not get along very well. Some members got along better than others. Like, we know that Whitebeard, you know, stood with Rocks at the very end there, you know, and honestly, you could argue Whitebeard was the only one that stood with Rocks. Kaido was there too, but you get it's a different vibe with Kaido. With Kaido, it was more of like, hey, Rocks, Whitebeard, big bros, check it out. I got a dragon fruit now, you know? You get the impression he was more of like an excited child that wanted to show off his new devil fruit power, rather than Whitebeard, who was more of like, you know what, Rocks, we've been together a while. We've been through a lot of bullshit together. Might not have the best pirate crew in the world, but you know what? I'm not going to abandon you here. I'm going to stay right here, and I'm going to fight alongside you. That was more Whitebeard's, you know, personality, right? We all know that that's how Whitebeard is. And then Kaido just rolls up, right? And then Big Mom showed up, too. And then Big Mom was just like, Kaido! Like, she wasn't even trying to hit Emu. I don't even know if Big Mom even realized Emu was there. She was, like, tunnel visioned on attacking Kaido at that point, right? Okay. So we see that with Whitebeard and Rocks and everybody. But that Haki that was directed towards Emu there was not like, stay away from my friends, or I'm not going to let my friends or my family be killed by you, monster. No, we get the reasonings behind pretty much everybody there on why they wanted to attack Emu. In the case with Roger and Garp, it was more about like, this is my prey, I'm gonna give it a shot. You know, like, Garp was like, oh, that's the Gorosei, huh? That weird, creepy shadow monster. Looks like it could use a punch in the face. Let's go! You know, it was more about, like, Roger and Garp trying to, like, test their mettle. Or just, like, that's a really powerful creature. I'm going to hit it really hard and see what happens, right? Because they're, like, fighting obsessed, okay? Kind of like Saiyans in that regard. And even after the fact, Garp and Roger were, like, arguing with one another, where they're like, yarg me hearty, it was my attack that brought them down. And Garp's like, shut up, Roger, it was my punch that did it, right? So it wasn't anything about, like, mutual, like, it wasn't like Garp was like, I need to make sure that this monster doesn't hurt these other guys, I'm going to punch it really hard. Doesn't seem to be the case there. When it comes to Rocks and Whitebeard just really kind of were like, all right, this creature's here, we need to sort of bring it down. Kaido kind of just wanted to show off his new power, and it was at that point between more of Kaido and Big Mom, like, hey, check this out, Lin, check out my really cool dragon breath ability, right? So that was more about Kaido trying to show off, if nothing else. Yeah, so it didn't really seem like they were, you know, attacking Emu to protect each other or anybody like that. It was more about just, like, testing their own mettle or showing off their powers to somebody else. That was kind of the idea, right? So let's talk a little bit about Baby Shanks. Not Shanks, Baby Shanks. Because Baby Shanks has seen a lot of stuff during God Valley. Just like tumbling all over the place, falling around, falling down, losing consciousness. Oh, poor Baby Shanks. All right, I completely missed this in the chapter, but there were plenty of people that went to the comment section and mentioned, hey, Tekking, Baby Shanks did not get affected by that hockey. He did not fall unconscious, which is weird because he's a baby. You'd assume that, like, this crazy amount of Conqueror's Haki spewing out after IMU absorbed that attack and just, boom, Conqueror's lightning everywhere. A lot of people lost consciousness from that, but Baby Shanks and also Dragon did not. All right, so a couple of things to clarify really quick. In that scene, after the combo attack was done, and then IMU reforms and then bursts out a huge wave of Haki. There were a bunch of Marines that passed out immediately that were in the like ground zero vicinity of around IMU, okay? We then cut to go see members of the Roger Pirates that, like Rayleigh is carrying Shockey away and ordering everybody else, hey, pick up the treasure, we're still on the clock, sort of things, and they don't get knocked out. Although I think it was like Mr. Momoma was the one that actually turned around, the one that we thought was like Morgan's, which with this flashback, I think it's pretty much confirmed at this point that he's not Morgan's. But anyway, they're all like looking around and they're feeling that incredible amount of Haki coming off of IMU, and they're like, what the hell is going on here? What is this feeling? They're likening it to Armageddon, to the end of the world, right? But they did not lose consciousness, okay? So the Roger Pirates didn't lose consciousness. Some other people did not. Dragon did not. And Baby Shanks did not. All right, Baby Shanks just unlocked the substitution jutsu and replaced himself with a tree log. So then we just see the scene with one of the treasure chests on the ground, and then Baby Shanks walking into it like, goo goo gaga, shiny. And he gets into the treasure chest, and that was where eventually Roger is going to find him, right? Okay, so we know that. Okay, so from the way we understand how Conquerors works, if you have a strong enough will, you can resist it. Now, you don't have to have, and this is very crucial, you don't have to have the same level of willpower or the same level of Haki or the same power level as the person that exudes the Haki. All right, and that has been shown since the very beginning, pretty much. When Rayleigh first appeared at Sabaody, and he walked out into the auction house, and then he used his Conqueror's Haki to knock out everybody in the hall. Crucially, Eustace Kid and Trafalgar Law did not get knocked out from that. And he did not direct the Haki at Luffy and his crew. He was kind of directing it at everybody else. But he did mention that, like, oh, there's some strong people here that were able to resist it. So, like, Law and Kid did not get knocked out. They were not even close to being on Rayleigh's level, well, now and also then. And then also, even Sachi and Penguin, members of the Heart Pirates, of Law's crew, they also did not get knocked out. They had a little bit more trouble with it. They were like, whoa, I almost got knocked out there, right? Sachi and Penguin are leaps and bounds at this point, especially way lower than Rayleigh. But they were still able to resist the Conqueror's Haki from the Dark King himself. That's impressive, okay? So it would make sense that the Roger Pirates, you know, are able to resist that level of Haki. They felt the ominous nature coming off of it, like this is like the end of the world. This is like Ragnarok happening right now, right? This is giving me goosebumps. This is making me feel weird, but not knocking them out makes sense. Likewise, the random Marines that were all stationed around the island getting knocked out makes sense as well. Now, when it comes to Dragon and Shanks, here's some ideas here. Okay, so every time a big wave of Conqueror's Haki is used, something akin to what we saw in the last chapter and then Emmett's Haki nuke, something that just like reverberates around an entire island, okay? Do we often see like every living creature being affected by that? Now, it could be that it does in fact happen, Oda just doesn't focus on this. What I'm saying is, like, when Emmett's Haki nuke went off, yes, it affected all the Marines and it affected the Gorosei in a big way, although that might be a unique factor where Joy Boy's Haki affected the Gorosei much more. Like, they're like, it's like a super effective technique against them or something because of just the nature of what their powers are, and they're from IMU, and then Joy Boy and IMU are like the antithesis of each other, so that might be a separate category. But like, my point is, we didn't see like birds falling out of the sky or like fish bubbling up from the ocean after that Haki nuke went off, right? It seems like there's certain creatures that are it's directed at, or certain like other people that have intent. You know, like the Marines were there as like conscious humans, and then they were affected by it because maybe Emu was just like, all humans bow before me, boom, and then, you know, because Emu, actually they don't really even call them humans, they call them insects, but yeah, they're just like being knocked out that way, right? But maybe like certain life forms that are below the notice of the person using the Conqueror's Haki are kind of immune. It kind of like goes over their heads, right? Another way to put it is that when Rayleigh walked out in the auction house and used his Conqueror's Haki, did like every single creature, like every spider, every rat in the walls of the auction house, did they get knocked out as well? Obviously, Oda didn't show that, but I like to think no. I like to think, and I could be wrong on this, there could be something that contradicts that, because there's been a lot of big giant bursts of Conqueror's Haki in the story, but the way I'm looking at this is like, Baby Shanks has such a like low life signature, I guess, that the Haki just flew right over Baby Shanks' head and was just like, huh? Maybe didn't even feel it, right? Could be something like that. Same thing with Dragon, maybe. Dragon is just like a Marine recruit at this point. It really seems like he doesn't have Haki. He's been relying on like his tranquilizer gun the entire time, and he seems pretty freaked out. He doesn't have a Devil Fruit ability, certainly, and it really seems like he doesn't understand Haki. So, you know, he hasn't at least mentioned it at all, right? So it's possible that these beings, you know, like Dragon and Baby Shanks and everybody else might just be same thing with Eris holding Teach. Although later on, Emu did say that like I can sense them in the forest, but that's a little different because Emu at that point wanted to Domi Reversi rocks and make rocks go and kill Eris and Teach. So it wasn't really about Emu directing it, but it's like it seems like Emu using Haki. And observation was the thing that, you know, Emu could use to sense them. But there has to be a level of, like, awareness. There has to be a level of, like, I am now going to, like, focus my observation to find Rox's wife and child. Oh, there they are over there. Something very easy that Emu can do, but still has to pull their attention to do it. Here's another big one. Remember back at Reverie, when Cobra was speaking with Emu, and all attention was on Cobra, and Emu was explaining, like, oh, the poneglyphs and those pirates, and Lily's great blunder and everything like that. The Gorosei were in there, Emu were in there. All really powerful Haki users. Sabo was hiding behind a damn pillar, like, I don't know, a few dozen meters away, or a few yards away, you know? Like, he wasn't that far away. He was right there. He was close enough to kind of hear everything that was going on. And none of the people in this room, none of the 5 elders, or the ruler of the world, the Rat King, was able to sense that, like, there's a dude hiding behind a pillar right over there. What if it's because they didn't know their attention was on Cobra, their attention was not on opening up observation Haki to sense everything in this room, right? Now, the second Sabo popped out, everyone was like, where did you come from? And then, you know, Emu goes into the giant monster form, like, you know, and all the Gorosei transform and everything like that, right? So, and also, given their abilities, Emu's not afraid of dying from anything like that, especially not like a Devil Fruit power like the Maramarinomi. But that seems to imply that, like, yeah, if Emu wanted to open up observation to sense life, could have easily detected Sabo, but also it's like, I'm focusing on Cobra right now, but if it's like, I'll move your attention over. So there's still ways that you can avoid that, right? And so, especially when it comes to the Marines that got knocked out that were surrounding Emu, they might have known like little basics of Haki as well. I think they were all like Marines that were kind of in Garp's squad. So that might be like, oh, maybe everybody that knows Haki in the immediate vicinity was affected by this. Obviously, Whitebeard and Roger and their group wouldn't have been affected by this because they're just so strong. It seems like even with Haki that's incredibly powerful, like Emmett's Haki nuke was strong enough to knock out even Vice Admirals, which was very, very impressive, but still was not able to knock out like Kizaru, for instance, right? So even probably the strongest Haki we're ever going to see in the story, well, maybe, even then, admiral level characters were able to resist that, okay? Also very similar to the scene in Film Red, and we're actually going to talk about that a bit here, because in Film Red, Shanks releases a giant burst of Haki that makes even a lot of the vice admirals like Momonga like go down on their knees and get knocked out, right? I don't think Momonga got knocked out in the movie. I think he just kind of got knocked down a little bit, right? Once again, Kizaru was able to resist that. Now, remember when the Haki nuke went off, Dory and Bragi were there, and Dory and Bragi specifically mentioned that Haki is even stronger than Shanks, which seems to imply that Shanks's Haki was, up until that point, the most powerful Haki that Dory and Bragi, great warriors of Elbaf, giant warriors, ever felt up to that point. Okay? They're like, oh yeah, Shanks' Haki is the strongest Haki. And then that went off, the Haki nuke, and they're like, whoa, okay, that's even more powerful, right? So Shanks' Haki is not to be underestimated. So could it be, yeah, Dragon and Baby Shanks were just like, they didn't have Haki and they were just so insignificant to Emu they didn't even notice? Or could it be something unique of Baby Shanks? Because, you know, Shanks is talked about to being like the prophecy child and everything like that. It could be something like a particular thing for Shanks, and I guess Shamrock in that regard, where they are immune from this kind of Haki. Even as children, even as babies, they're just like, oh yeah, Haki doesn't bother us at all. Not a big deal. I don't know. That one's a little bit more of a long shot for me, personally. It could just be that, like, I was going to say, and this is before I noticed that Dragon was also kind of like, he got knocked down from the blast wave, but he didn't seem to be affected by the Haki. He didn't lose consciousness. So I was going to say, maybe just all babies are immune to the Conqueror's Haki wave. Like, just like if you're a baby, you're just immune to it. I don't know, but it doesn't seem to be the case because, like, Dragon was able to resist it too. So I'm going to say it has less to do with being an actual baby and more about just having, you know, no Haki at that point, and, like, you're just such a lower life form from Emu's perspective. It just doesn't matter, right? So we can go with that, absolutely. So with all that being said, we could now have a situation where I don't want to say it's like somebody without Haki is the perfect person to defeat Emu. I don't think it's going to go along with that particular angle. It's not like in Mob Psycho when, you know, Reagan just goes up and just clocks that one guy in the face, like one of the strongest psychics in the entire season, and he's just like, ah! He just punches him because he has, like, no psychic powers. Nothing like that. But you have to have a particular flavor of Haki in order to make this work, okay? And we know Joy Boy's Haki affects Emu, and we have Luffy, who has the power of Joy Boy, has the Hito Hito no Mi model sun god. So it would seem like that is kind of setting up. And we know Luffy's personality is kind of childish and very much all about fun and having all that kind of stuff. And so it's like very possible that that type of Haki is the only thing that's going to be able to hurt Emu. Possibly also like Davy Jones as like Haki as well, but I don't know. The way that Emu was speaking to Rox was like, so you are Davy Jones, and Rox was like, no, I'm not that guy. Sorry, you got the wrong dude, right? So what if you like? I'm thinking at this point, Joy Boy and Davy Jones were separate people. Okay, they were maybe like the Blackbeard and of their day. And Davy Jones was certainly a threat, certainly powerful, but ultimately did not have the strength ready to defeat Emu. And so Emu was like, oh, you're Davy Jones. I remember you. Not a big deal. I'm not really afraid of you or anything like that. But Emu is afraid of Joy Boy. So that's a different thing altogether. So yeah, it's not something that ridiculous. Like, hey, did you know that Oda was setting it up so Luffy, the Sun God, was going to defeat Emu, Lord of Darkness, and the Rat King? It's like, obviously, like, it's like the final boss of the story is going to be defeated by the main character, right? But we kind of get a new angle with this now. And maybe we even have Shanks. Maybe Shanks, as an adult right now, goes up against Emu and maybe gets kind of far, but just doesn't eventually end up delivering the killing blow, or the killing blow is really tough. I'm going to make another video about this because we mentioned the Rat King situation, you know, and I went and I didn't even know that was a thing. I like just typed in Rat King, and it's like that image of all the rats with their tails being tied together. And I'm like, interesting. So maybe Emu and the Gorosei are all like rats getting their tails tied together, and Emu's the one lording over them, I guess. Like, I wasn't really sure exactly. A lot of people commented on this, and it was a really cool idea. about how what if the original 20, or I guess not all of the original 20, although maybe Lily might have been included in this too, are basically emu. As in, like, all of the originals, the original rulers of the world government, their consciousnesses are kind of smashed together and blended together into one body. And that one body is emu. That's a cool idea. I was reading that. That's really interesting, and I'm gonna talk about that later because I really want to like sit down and like, okay, how would that go? But that's fascinating, and also kind of explains a little bit about emu's personality, of how eclectic it can kind of be. So there we go. And also, I'm pretty sure emu is just the shadow monster at this point. Like, I don't even think it's gonna be like we find out what emu's face is. I mean, we're gonna probably find out what emu Neurona's face was like 900 years ago or whatever. But as for right now, I think, yeah, emu is just a shadow monster. That is what they are. Okay. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Let me know down below what you feel about this whole hockey situation and how Baby Shanks was able to survive all that. Thanks for watching. Techig signing out.